delegates from inside for the opposition and CK.
Mr. Speaker and members of this House, these guys said if you can't do something and it damages the others without any intentions, you must compensate the people. These are the things they want to try to bring in this debate, right? Then I give you the questions. If policemen came to the scenes on time, right? Can you guys bring the money to the people? I think the answer might be no, because policemen do their own best job within the system. That is the thing we must prove in today's debate. With that, I have two arguments. Firstly, I'm going to talk about what is the nature of appeal. And secondly, I'm going to talk about why there is a public perception and why that policy makes that perception worse. And before moving on to my first argument, I'm going to reverse some of the things from the government, right? First, harms. They say there is some misconceptions, right? But it is exactly the same as the trial without appeal. The only different thing is one more trial, right? The example they brought up today, O.J. Simpson, yes, they have public conception. He's bad people, but he never have the appeal, right? So the harms they want to talk about in today's debate, in every trial and appeal, and they must provide money to every people. Secondly, the money never compensates you in terms of social conceptions, right? These guys said because it is harm to the social conception, family is going away, friends is going away, your community is going away, then how can your money can fix these problems? And this was, and they talk about there is misconception. We already have a system, Madam Mr. Speaker. Media, newspaper, courts can themselves say, I made a mistake, these guys were not criminals. If people can trust that system, it's the problems of that person, not the procedure itself exists, right? Secondly, they say judges should be cautious, right? These guys, the problem is African American, and they just misrepresent our case. These judges have an intentional harm to the people, discriminate African American. In that sense, the system is fair. But what we're trying to do is, judges and every system, they never have an intention to give unbenefit to the people. This is the very misrepresentation from these people. And they talk about confidence. They want to give the confidence, right? If I'm not guilty, I'll be confident in the system. I will try and get a trial. It's not just about confidence. And what is your confidence and comfortableness exists when safeguard take off these guys never you know, right? That safeguard is just fair. When you say appeal should need a lot of money and judges too much cautious about they just release the prisoners and criminals in the court, that just fail and ruin the justice system and safeguard the case we want to talk about in today's fair. Then they talk about poor people can't. I think just paying the money is very unsustainable, right? And before you get good lawyers and getting money from the court, you can buy that lawyer because at the first place you don't have money. The best way, the best sustainable way to help poor people is, like Ted said, we can put the money in the justice system rather than paying money to these people. I think this is the best way to help the poor people. Yes.
We would like to return the time and help these people fully restore their family ties. But why we shouldn't at least give them the money to help get in?
Okay, these guys just sweep the case, right? These guys said, I want to get the perception is right because there is a wrong conception. I clearly said, there is a media, news. People must trust this system, but these guys just ruin the system. That is my second argument why these guys making this worse in the status quo. First argument, nature of appeal. There is two systems, right? When there's appeal success. First, maybe people fucked up. Like they say, their people is bad. And they just got money and just making a bad conception. Then just to the people, I don't care about this system. The second problem is there's a new evidence is there. Why this is unfair to the system? When there was first investigation, because there wasn't any mistakes, right? They just do their best inside of the system. They just use their own power within their power. But the problem is when the new technology introduced, which wasn't there in the first place, when the new witness came back, which wasn't there in the first place, they cannot do anything. And nowadays, people just say, okay, I know you cannot do this, but like this life, right? You must fix this problem. This is a sense these guys are doing this debate. Why do you accuse the people using their own powers, do their best, but just fail without their powers? I think this is fundamentally unfair at the first place. And secondly, there is a public perception, right? Third way you can appeal is technical problems, right? When rich people pay a lot of money to the lawyers, I think you can't just accuse some of the procedural evidence. I might get the list. There is a two-way. First, if I find the evidence without warranty, that evidence can accuse of technicality. Yeah. Secondly, if I just accuse of the quality of the evidence, I think there's evidence, but lawyers kind of tricky, right? They just help them. And these people just pay a lot of money and they just found out this evidence is not qualified. Then people might get rid of the prisons. Why this problem, Mr. Speaker? I think this is the fair, just they get out of, because it is a system, right? But the problem is people have a conception. Maybe these people is bad, but they're just using technicality. I think these guys criminals, but our system is a system. I can't do anything. This is the problem. But on top of that, these guys just paying the money to the people who don't deserve at the first place. I think this is the very problem. Because people doubt themselves because justice system just avoid and erasing the punishment people deserve to get and paying more money in our money. I think that money can spend for the raising the quality of the justice system. If you compare just paying $10 million for individuals and put the money in the justice system, we can save more money like these guys want to save the poor people. And when we just deter people being a criminal, we always balancing cost and harm, right? When there's more harm, people don't do the criminals. But these guys just say, okay, I think the benefit is just too small. I want to increase the benefit. Like, if you go to the court and appeal, you can get a lot of money. People who have bad intentions but cannot because they are not ready enough, they will do the actions because these guys just put more power in the benefit in terms of criminals. I think this is a very problematic. Mr. Speaker, the things these guys say can be solved inside of the justice system, and every single same misconception can be solved by the media, newspaper, and system. For those reasons, I'm very proud to oppose this motion.
Mr. Speaker, I think this side of the opposition's case is extremely simplistic. Because the case, just look at the kind of argumentation coming from the speaker before me. This argument is abuse. When the first speaker himself said that there are already checks and balances within the system, I don't think that this abuse cannot be detected if these things exist in the first place. But furthermore, Mr. Speaker, when I was working, and I have been working for 5 years after I quit debating, and I am too old for this shit actually. When we were working, we had to solve a lot of problems in our company. And of course, nobody intends to screw up the speaker. But when the problem exists, there had to be something done to repair that problem. And this is what this debate about. Because what the side of the opposition basically in this debate is only look at one half of what the justice system does, what the one half of what the justice system functions at, deciding what is right, intending to do the right thing, intending to do the justified thing. But when mistakes occur, Mr. Speaker, have they addressed in any of the institutions before me what to do about this? And we feel, Mr. Speaker, this is the particular problem on this side because they're not debating. Because in the end, they had to prove to us that intent is enough. And that intent is enough to cover up the fact that you did screw up, and we feel, Mr. Speaker, that's where the problem exists. Sit down. Let's look at 3 issues, and these are the 3 issues with some of this debate, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, we'll look at this idea of intent being enough justification. Secondly, the idea of harms, and I'm going to analyze the harms on the side of the government that we identified versus the harms on the side of the opposition. And thirdly, Mr. Speaker, one thing which wasn't addressed is the idea of the image of the justice system and the poor people that we are talking about. Now, the simplistic answer, looking at the first issue, the simplistic answer is that came is intent enough. This idea that if policemen are not arriving on time, are they gonna they're gonna compensate them? Mr. Speaker, let's look at the difference between how policemen that's basically a reaction to an emergency, Mr. Speaker, versus a trial. Because when a reaction to emergency is this, policemen are affected by a lot of things which they can't control, Mr. Speaker. Look at the fact that there can be traffic jams and so on and so forth. But the fundamental difference is, Mr. Speaker, a victim calls a policeman to his house. Same thing, Mr. Speaker. The court calls a criminal to the court, and therefore, if that happens, this fundamental difference there. Because if you are subjecting a victim to a trial, Mr. Speaker, you must compensate when there is a mistake from your court. Sit down. Because in there, Mr. Speaker, how do you fix the problem of damage? Because this is fundamentally something that they haven't analysed. Because the justice system is basically a process, Mr. Speaker. You decide what is the problem. Is this guy, guilty or innocent? Then you take action on this particular person. Now, at the process of planning and the problem decision making, Mr. Speaker, what happens when at that point it screws up? There has to be some reparation, because this guy is not just spending idle time in jail, Mr. Speaker. He's subject to the trauma of being in jail. I know Senate talked about it. I'm not going to graphically depict it again. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, he's subjected to his family, separated from him. He's subjected to the public perception, even if he's acquitted. And we say, what have they done about that? Because as long as they say, Mr. Speaker, intent is there, we've already agreed that intent is no problem. And we agree with all the check and balance that they say. But they haven't still addressed what happens if all those check and balances fail. Until this point in time, Mr. Speaker, that's the answer we're trying to get from that. And I hope Logan can do that in speech, and I hope they do it now. Yeah.
But if this makes the justice system more careful and less willing to give appeals, doesn't that harm the justice system? Doesn't that create real harm?
Like you said, right? The money comes from the taxpayers. The justice system still has to do their work. You can actually balance that argument left and right, because now, if there is no compensation, is the justice system liable? Or is the justice system, going to do their job properly? Because in the end, they're going to get off scot-free. The most that you can do is fire the judge, and we can flip the argument on that POI themselves. Because in the end, yes, on this issue, the intent is there, and we agree that intent is good. Everybody should have good intent, and that's not a problem. But you have to, in the end, address what you do when that intent fails, Mr. Speaker. And this is something that they haven't talked about. Now let's look at the second issue, Mr. Speaker. The harms to the individual versus the state. Let's look at the first thing that they mentioned. They said that, look, judges are going to be, extremely cautious. Of course, you already said that that's not a problem. But the harms that they talked about, Mr. Speaker, is still within the check and balances that they have brought forward in this house. Because look, for God's sakes, their problem is that you can't take out money from the justice system to improve the justice system. But this is improving the justice system, because you've already said and established the fact that there are all these checks and balances, meaning that justice system in terms of intent is already perfect, Mr. Speaker. Now that intent must be repaired when there is a mistake. And we say that is improving the justice system. I don't see what they're saying, and this is what the government has been advocating for so far. But what about the damages to the individual, Mr. Speaker? The public perception, and this is where the O.J. Simpson trial example came in. Because even if O.J. Simpson was acquitted upon trial, Mr. Speaker, the public still believed that he was, he was guilty, and he was acquitted just because the hand didn't fit the glove. Now that's the kind of perception that people face when they're acquitted, especially in public trials, Mr. Speaker. Because when they leave the court, right, people are still going to question, was he guilty, was the acquittal technical, that kind of stuff, right? He's still going to be subject to that perception. But still, one point which was still not there was the fact that he had spent time in jail. He's lost his income, Mr. Speaker. He's lost his ability to recuperate the income. Now, what do you do to him? Because they say that it's okay, he doesn't deserve the money. But he does, Mr. Speaker. Because, you leave jail, right? You have the perception that you can't get a job, Mr. Speaker. What happens after that? You have to get started somewhere. And that's what the severance package, coming from the government's argument, stems upon. Because you got to give some leeway for people who are acquitted, especially that they're innocent. If you say that you rather put someone innocent on the street, you rather not put 10 people, get 10 people guilty and one person innocent, we still think that If that's the case, it applies. Because the fact that they're forgetting is that this guy is still innocent, Mr. Speaker. And we feel that at that point in time, based on that principle alone, you should compensate this guy because he is subject to the harms. The third idea, Mr. Speaker, something that never talked about. The idea of the public perception, right? Which is better, right? If you were the public, I mean, you are average citizen, which would be more appealing to you when it comes to the image of the public system? A justice system that not only attempts to get you a fair trial, Mr. Speaker, but also a public system that makes sure that if they make a mistake, they will compensate you. Because that's what the justice or the feeling of justice within a country is about, Mr. Speaker. Because in the end, what does a poor person feel, right? I mean, how do you guarantee the sort of quality that a judge that say will grant me once a criminal trial takes place? I don't have that. But if I have some kind of reparative way of getting compensation if the mistake happens, I believe, Mr. Speaker, that that's the best way for the image of the justice system. Has the opposition debated, Mr. Speaker? No, they haven't. Because all they've been talking about is intent. They have to address damages. Yeah.
I like this line from Ilzal's speech, and I'm going to use that to structure our speech. This is how us all guys work together. He said, when mistakes occur, something needs to be done to repair the problem. And we agree. And we're going to look at two parts of that. A, is there a mistake? Did a mistake occur? And B, will this indeed repair the problem, or will it make the problem worse? So, is there a mistake? Tate spent a lot of time talking about this at the start of the speech, and we agree it's not a mistake. Why is this important, though? Why is it important to discuss intent? Because only when you decide intent and who made the mistake, then that person should be responsible, Mr. Speaker. If that company made the mistake, then that company is responsible. If that individual in the company made the mistake, then that individual is responsible. And only the responsible person should pay. If the state did not make a mistake, if the justice system did not make a mistake, then they shouldn't pay. If it was a random chance, if it was God's fault, Mr. Speaker, then God should pay. Way too late, I must add, right? So that's why that notion of intent is important. It's not enough for them to say there is harm, because there's harm everywhere. There's a natural disaster that destroys my house, I'm hurt. There's a traffic jam that delays my wife to get in the hospital on time, I'm hurt. All these different things, shit happens to you, Mr. Speaker. But unless that shit is that specific person's fault, then that person does not need to pay, and this is why they must show that the state is directly responsible. Okay? So, so the question we ask then, not yet, sir, is that is the system as good as it gets? If it is, then we don't need to pay. If we need to pay, then we're saying the system isn't as good as it gets, and instead we must fix the system. States spend a lot of time talking about how there already is a high bar, how the system is taxed in favor of those people, right? But the danger thing is that if you say, not yet, if you say that even in a situation where we cannot show any intent, even in a situation where there is such a high bar, not yet, to protect you, then the state will still pay. Then the whole thing about not making policemen, firemen, social services, all these people also pay is a total contradiction. Because why on one level can we let these people off? Because I still lose, I'm still robbed, I'm still raped because the police officer did not get me on time. My child still burned to death, right? Because the fireman didn't get there on time. Why then do they not have to pay? We think if you want to be consistent, then all those people will need to pay. And this is why it's really, really important, it's crucial for them to discuss, to get any headway on compensation, for them to show that there was a mistake, right? So we don't think they've shown on any level there is a mistake. Yes?
If a judge is a representative of the judiciary, so if a judge makes a mistake, doesn't the judiciary also make a mistake?
If the judge makes, okay, right, like when we said if that judge makes a mistake in terms of the intent to cause that person that harm, and this is where that mistake comes from, or that person is negligent in functioning in his job. If it's a question of legal interpretation and the law changes, the way the case was brought forward before the judge changes, the judge cannot do anything about that. If the evidence changes, the judge cannot do anything about that. If the lawyer chooses to focus on a different strategy, Mr. Speaker, they cannot do anything about that. If this debate was done differently in front of these judges and you took a different direction and you win, then we cannot do anything about that. Something changed on re-debate. Okay? So that's not the focus of the judge. So that's the first question. There was a mistake, it's not a problem. Let's look at the second question then. Something needs to be done to repair the problem. Is something being done? Will this necessarily repair the problem? The two areas where we think this affects people, one on the individual and one on the level of justice. We completely empathize that people go through suffering and there's pain and something must be done to solve them. We don't think that giving people money necessarily takes away the pain. Actually, we think it's quite demeaning to say that you can forget about anal rape because you get paid. This is bigger, right? We think that's a big problem. We think it's furthermore, it creates a problem by pushing those things under the carpet. If there's a problem, if someone was raped anally in the prison, we need to find out what happened. We need to punish that warden. We need to if the judge was biased, that judge should lose his job. Paying people makes it harder, and we believe removes the imperative for you to make these changes, and that is a huge problem. We also said that it harms justice, and this I think is a crucial part of Tate's Constructive, which is never addressed, right? So how does this? No, thank you. How does this make people? If it makes people feel reticent about it, if it slows down justice, if I suddenly take even longer to bring justice to people, then other people are still harmed in that process. If a criminal lingers longer on the streets and is able to cause more harm to other people, that is also harm that needs to be compensated perhaps under your model. If it makes it much harder for someone to get appeal, and he talked about the nature and the appeals court, there is a lot more publicity involved, where circuit judges are in most places elected. They will be far less likely, no thank you, to give that appeal. We think that's a problem. NC also talked about further harms, but it wasn't just his notion of abuse. He said in the mindset of a criminal, this reduces that amount of deterrence, because it increases the chances that if I can get away with this crime, if I can get away on some kind of technicality, now not do I only screw over the state, I can get the state to pay me money. And we think that greatly overcomplicates things, and if anything, we think to the individual, this reduces the amount that an individual will get. Paying people and not going to take away their pain. If you want to correct the wrong, punish the people who did those bad things to them. But if what it does is increases the possibility that other individuals will be denied justice, then we think that is a loss that we're not willing to take. But what about justice? What about whether or not this will repair or fix justice? On dispensation of justice and perception of justice. We don't think it improves the dispensation of justice. If poor people can't get access to justice now, they're not going to get proper access to justice in order to file through their appeals. That doesn't make sense. We need to use the money that we're going to compensate people to ensure everyone has good lawyers at the start, so they never get screwed anyway, ladies and gentlemen, right? So in regards to dispensation, we don't think how this improves the amount of justice or dispensation of justice. If anything, again, we think it greatly reduces it. In regards of the perception of justice, and NC talked about this and we think this wasn't adequately dealt with. Society accepts that justice is blind. Sometimes the bad guys will get away, right? And people think that that's wrong and they shouldn't, and we should try harder to catch them. But when the bad guys get away and we pay the bad guys, and as they say, if these people are rich, right, or these people get away with those laws, then the life is truly, truly sucky. Because you're using my money now to pay those bad guys. And laymen won't understand the technicalities of the law or evidentiary connection or chain and links which got that bad guy to get away, but they will understand that we're giving him $10 million. And I don't want him to get $10 million. We think this greatly destroys the faith and integrity that we have in the justice system. We're not arguing on side opposition that life is perfect. We're arguing that the justice system is as good as it can get. We think if we can improve that, we will continue to improve it. But this is what we have today. Every citizen should be willing to be tried and put their faith through the justice system and trust in the outcome of the justice system. We do, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you do as well.
Mr. Speaker, I love this catch cry that's been consistent through the theme. You guys are not doing anything about their suffering. Of course we're not. We're in opposition on the motion. We're not supposed to do anything about their suffering. But it's not like we sit around eating our meals of dog curry and laugh at these people, ladies and gentlemen. We recognize that there is pain caused here. But this debate doesn't operate in the paradigm of whether harm was there, although we think they exaggerated it on this side. This debate operates within a balance. And that balance that it operates in is, given the harms that have come to this individual, are there principal procedures that were put in place to prevent them, as well as a broader social cost that can come from adopting their policy. And we say resoundingly on our side, we have comprehensively won all of those issues. Firstly, let's talk about the four ideas that are tipping in this debate. Firstly, this idea of punishing and deterring the justice system, keeping them on the straight and narrow. Secondly, this idea of inherent issues that are in society now and problems in the justice system. Thirdly, on this idea of whether or not it keeps society safer and helps people who are actually innocent. And finally, the principles I talked about in my speech. Firstly, on punishing and deterring the justice system. And remember, keep in mind, Mr. Speaker, in the first speaker's speech, when we asked her, do you have any inherent problem with the justice system now? Is there anything that you want to fix? She said no. She said it's fine as it is. It's fine and it works as it is. I provided better context in terms of how someone ends up before the bench, how they can end up going to prison. It's a multi-layered process. It's a process where we put preponderance on making sure that guilty people might be able to walk free as long as no innocent person goes to prison. They never addressed any of that. Finally, we also want to point out, while you can talk about the consequences all you want, there is a question of intent here. And we demonstrated in the offside, there was no intent to harm. Then this is where we really hurt them, when we asked them in the POI about police. We said, if the police don't show up in time, right, are you able to get compensation? Because you were hurt. The state didn't discharge its responsibility and you were hurt. And we said, under that paradigm, you're not. In the same case here, while the state executed to the best of its ability the purpose of giving you justice and a fair trial, it failed because of circumstances beyond its control. And we outlined those circumstances. Do you have a right to claim it? And we say, under the same test that they accepted, people can't be compensated when the police don't show up in time, we pass that test too. Second issue, inherent issues. Okay, Sanat comes out here and tries to shift the debate a bit. He goes, look here guys, African Americans are really harmed. Poor people are really harmed. And this is where NC and Logan respond by going, but seriously, it's a sustainable solution to these problems to pay off every person who has been harmed by the system that comes out after they've been harmed money. Firstly, on the level that it's not going to make up for all the harm that you thought were there. But more than that, it's not going to fix the system. If it's a question of sustainable focus of resources, we say put it in the system that you seem to believe is broken. And we say we're not happy to defend those judges. We think they are a problem, and we think our model recognizes you should punish those people. You should fine them, just as you would judges who sleep in debates. Finally, we ask the question, of helping, does this help or harm criminals and societal safety, or innocent here? We pointed out in my first speech how, given the way the justice system works, given the election of judges, this is going to result in one of two outcomes. A, either people won't convict at the initial trial for fear of getting an overturned trial and a huge compensation package thrown out, or B, during the appeal trial, they will choose to not accept the appeal for fear of the compensation. Finally, the principles I talked about. You can't have your cake and eat it too. We trust in this justice system to protect us. We trust in it to keep us safe. They never responded to any of the fear. That there's an expectation and a benefit from the state keeping things this way. But there are sometimes costs and mistakes can be made. Given the benefits you get, is it fair to charge them this way? On all four of those reasons, we have won, and we're still proud to oppose.
Then the opposition replied to the speech. Some of the best of all, common government replied.
Say it's an engineering company, right? An engineer makes a mistake. Engineer still the company, the employers of engineer are still liable for the mistake that engineer had made. Even if that mistake was a mistake made in good faith, the mistake still has to be compensated at the end of the day. So let's look at company 2. Company number 2 is company judiciary, with their employer, Mr. Judge. Mr. Judge made a mistake, and that mistake was to send an innocent man into jail. An innocent man now has to spend years and years of his life suffering away from his family, unable to provide, and unable to provide a living for his family, unable to be with his family and maintain a relationship with his family. That's the mistake that's happening, Mr. Speaker, and you believe that that mistake should be compensated. And if that mistake should be compensated by the judiciary. What seems to be happening, Mr. Speaker, is that side opposition seems to be intent on arguing on the basis that a judge has the intention to make a mistake. What we're trying to push to you, Mr. Speaker, is that this mistake happens regardless of intention. This mistake happens even in good faith. And just because there was no intention doesn't mean a wrong wasn't committed. We need to compensate the wrong for the sake of society, for the sake of people to continue having confidence in their judiciary, Mr. Speaker, and we must have this compensation, right? But let's talk about what happened in the debate. Because essentially, the debate was about what happens when the system fails. On one side, we tell you when we can find a failure in the system, compensation must be provided, right? When on appeal, you argue on the law, right? You argue on the law and you find a mistake in the law, you have to pay compensation because a mistake was done and a wrong was committed onto the innocent individual. But what did we hear? What solution did we get from side opposition? Nothing, Mr. Speaker. They seem to believe that it's fine to just let these people suffer, let these people have to recuperate their lives from the ground up, from the basement up, Mr. Speaker, because now not only have these people have to rebuild those relationships and earn another living, they have to start, they have to do it faced with the stigma of society. We believe that's a grave injustice onto people who didn't, onto innocent people, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, it was about a balance of harms, between both proposals. If you pass the proposal, they say that judges, hang on. Let's look at the harms that they gave us if our proposal were to pass. There are harms where judges will be too careful, which was simply a problem for judges to be too careful, right? There are harms where unfair expectation, when in fact in the judiciary, you're supposed to prove beyond reasonable doubt, beyond even an inch of a doubt that the case is, that person is actually a criminal, Mr. Speaker. That's already within the system. There are harms was the fact that people will purposely hamper with procedure, as if that doesn't already happen within the system in itself, Mr. Speaker. What we're trying to prove here is when hampering happens, we have methods to compensate. We have methods to solve that problem, and they never address that, Mr. Speaker. They seem to believe it's all about intent. It's all about whether or not a judge suddenly wants to purposely send a person into jail. We believe, Mr. Speaker, that if a wrong was compensated, if a wrong was made, compensation should be given. And on a balance of harms, which case really supports the people, Mr. Speaker. They are inside opposition. They show inside opposition, if we fail to allow for this motion to pass, the harm to society would be much too great. The injustice that could possibly be inflicted into society is much too great, Mr. Speaker. We shouldn't allow for the judiciary, we shouldn't allow for injustice to be inflicted on the people, Mr. Speaker. What's most important, and what we're trying to fight for, is that when the system fails, when a mistake happens, Mr. Speaker, when a mistake happens, regardless of intent, regardless if it was made in good faith, it should be compensated for the sake of society and for the sake of the image of the judiciary, Mr. Speaker. We are proud to propose. Thank you.